Shalom, and welcome to this presentation on the gathering of Messiah YHWSHWA's chosen ones, resurrection, change, and ascension to Father YHWH's house in the Shamayim. Understanding the different comings of the Son of Adam, return for battle and to rule. Some people think that there is no scriptural evidence for a so-called rapture. Now, one part of that is true. That word rapture is not found in the scriptures, and it actually is associated with a doctrine that I'm not a believer in, nor do I believe is true. But there is scriptural evidence for a gathering. So if when someone says there's no scriptural evidence for the rapture, they mean there's no scriptural evidence for a gathering at all, that would be incorrect. So to really understand how these scriptures come together and provide evidence for a gathering, we have to understand the different comings of Messiah YHWSHWA. So here we're going to understand return for battle and to rule. We're going to look at Ezekiel chapter 37, verses 21 through 28. Here, this is a promise of Israel becoming one sovereignty, right? One kingdom, comprised of all 12 tribes. So that means the reunification of the 12 tribes, because we know they were divided into two sovereignties, right? The kingdom of the north and the kingdom of the south. And also, not only that, but they're going to be in the promised land. So after being scattered for thousands of years, they return back to their promised land. Praise Yah. We're going to also look at Acts chapter 1, verses 6 through 7. And when we look at those verses, we're going to remember that Jerusalem and the promised land were under subjection to Rome at the time. When that was written, there was no Israelite sovereignty at that time or kingdom. And the prophetic writings promise one united Israelite sovereignty. That's what we just discussed in Ezekiel chapter 37, and we'll see that in those verses. So that's what the taught ones of Messiah were expecting. We're also going to look at Revelation chapter 19, verses 11 through 21, because that is a coming, that is a return of our Master Messiah YHWSHWA, and he's specifically returning for battle and then to rule. We're also going to look at Revelation chapter 20, verse 6. That's our scriptural evidence that after that battle in Revelation chapter 19, that the 1,000-year reign begins. Praise Yah. Understanding the different comings of the Son of Adam, return for battle and to rule. Here we have Ezekiel chapter 37, verses 21 through 24. Verse 21, and speak to them, thus said the Master Yah, see, I am taking the children of Israel from among the nations, wherever they have gone, and shall gather them from all around, and I shall bring them into their land. Verse 22, and I shall make them one nation in the land, on the mountains of Israel, and one sovereign shall be sovereign over them all. And let them no longer be two nations, and let them no longer be divided into two reigns. Verse 23, and they shall no longer defile themselves with their idols, nor with their disgusting matters, nor with any of their transgressions, and I shall save them from all their dwelling places in which they have sinned, and I shall cleanse them, and they shall be my people, and I be their Elohim. Verse 24, while David, or David, my servant, is sovereign over them. And they shall all have one shepherd, and walk in my right rulings, and guard my laws, and shall do them. Continuing with Ezekiel chapter 37, verses 25 through 28, verse 25. And they shall dwell in the land that I have given to Yaakov, my servant, where your fathers dwelt, and they shall dwell in it, they and their children and their children's children forever, and my servant David, or David, be their prince forever. Verse 26, and I shall make a covenant of peace with them, an everlasting covenant it is with them. And I shall place them and increase them, and shall place my set-apart place in their midst forever. Verse 27, and my dwelling place shall be over them, and I shall be their Elohim, and they shall be my people. Verse 28, and the nations shall know that I, Yah, am setting Israel apart, when my set-apart place is in their midst forever. Praise Yah for those scriptures that we just read. I just want to point our attention also that this is talking about the set-apart place of Yah being there. The book of Ezekiel describes a house of Yah that will be built. People like to call it a temple in our modern time, but this is the house of Yah that is going to be built during that 1,000-year reign of Messiah, and it is his set-apart place that will be among them for that 1,000 years. Now let us consider Acts chapter 1 verses 6 and 7. Now we can understand why the taught ones of Messiah asked him this question, because they knew what it said in Ezekiel and other prophet writings. Praise Yah. Verse 6. So when they had come together, they asked him, saying, Master, would you at this time restore the reign to Israel? Verse 7. And he said to them, it is not for you to know times or seasons which the Father has put in his own authority. Thank Yah for his word. Let us consider, because some people take verse 7 and they think that no one should be looking into any end time events, but it was specifically at that time, when they asked him at that time, that it wasn't for them to know, right, concerning the restoration of the sovereignty of Israel, right, of their kingdom. We know that it was going to come. We just read that in Ezekiel, right? The promises of Yah. And there are many other examples. That's just one. But it wasn't for that time. Now, interestingly, one of the 12 taught ones was Yohanan, right? Or John. And he was there with the ones that were asking this. And later on, Messiah YHWSHWA made the revelations to him that are contained in the book of Revelation. So eventually he did get a good understanding of exactly how all this would come to pass. Praise Yah. But at the time when they asked him, it wasn't their time to know it yet. Let's continue here with Revelation chapter 19. This is when our Master Messiah YHWSHWA returns for battle against the beast, the false prophet that are mentioned in Revelation chapter 13, and their army of nations. Let's read from verses 11 through 16. Starting from verse 11. And I saw the heaven open, and there was a white horse, and he who sat on him was called trustworthy and true, and in righteousness he judges and fights. Verse 12. And his eyes were as a flame of fire, and on his head were many crowns, having a name that had been written, which no one had perceived except himself. Verse 13. And having been dressed in a robe dipped in blood, and his name is called the Word of Yah. Verse 14. And the armies in the heaven, dressed in fine linen, white and clean, followed him on white horses. Verse 15. And out of his mouth goes a sharp sword, that with it he should smite the nations. And he shall shepherd them with a rod of iron, and he treads the winepress of the fierceness and wrath of El Shaddai. Verse 16. And on his robe and on his thigh he has a name written, Sovereign of Sovereigns and Master of Masters. Let us continue with Revelation chapter 19, verses 17 through 21. And then we're also going to look at Revelation chapter 20, verse 6. Revelation chapter 19, verse 17. And I saw one messenger, or angel, standing in the sun, and he cried with a loud voice, saying to all the birds that fly in mid-heaven, Come and gather for the supper of the great Elohim. Verse 18. To eat the flesh of sovereigns, and the flesh of commanders, and the flesh of strong ones, and the flesh of horses, and of those who sit on them, and the flesh of all people, free and slave, both small and great. Verse 19, and I saw the beast, and the sovereigns of the earth, and their armies, gathered together to fight him who sat on the horse and his army. Verse 20, and the beast was seized, and with him the false prophet, who worked signs in his presence, and by which he led astray those who received the mark of the beast, and those who worshipped his image. The two were thrown alive into the lake of fire burning with sulfur. And verse 21, and the rest were killed with the sword which came from the mouth of him who sat on the horse, and all the birds were filled with their flesh. So that concludes this great battle, the return of Messiah YHWSHWA for that battle. And then right after that battle, Revelation chapter 20 verse 6, it reminds us that the 1,000-year reign has begun. It says, blessed and set apart is the one having part in the first resurrection. The second death possesses no authority over these, but they shall be priests of Elohim and of Messiah, and shall reign with him 1,000 years. So there we see the evidence of this 1,000-year reign of Messiah, YHWSHWA, over all the earth after the battle, captured here in Revelation chapter 19. So the scriptures that were presented already are enough to show a return of Messiah YHWSHWA for battle and to reign or to rule. Now we're going to look at some other scriptures. So you have to be able to distinguish that these are different purposes and a different return, right? So this time it's going to be scriptures that show us evidence for the return of Messiah YHWSHWA for the gathering of the chosen ones, specifically for that, returning for the gathering of the chosen ones. Let's look at these verses in Acts chapter 1. We're going to look at verses 9 through 11. Starting from verse 9. And having said this, while they were looking on, he was taken up, and a cloud hid him from their sight. Verse 10. And as they were gazing into the heaven, as he went up, see, 2 men stood by them dressed in white. Verse 11. Who also said, Men of Galilee, or Galilee, why do you stand looking up into heaven? This same YHWSHWA, who was taken up from you into the heaven, shall come in the same way as you saw him go into the heaven. Now I want us to consider this, that Messiah YHWSHWA ascended in a cloud, according to verse 9. When he comes on the white horse, he's not coming with the clouds. That's a different coming on the white horse. But this one, it was an ascension into the clouds. And it says here in verse 11, the same YHWSHWA who was also taken up is coming back in the same way. That means he's going to come with the clouds or on the clouds. And we're going to see evidence for that. Here's some more scriptures to confirm the return of our Master Messiah YHWSHWA for the gathering of the chosen ones. Revelation chapter 1 verse 7. See, he is coming with the clouds, and every eye shall see him, even they who pierced him, and all the tribes of the earth shall mourn because of him. Yes, amen. Now, coming with the clouds aligns perfectly with what we just read in Acts chapter 1, that he would come in the same way that he had ascended, right, to the clouds. So here we see in Revelation chapter 1 verse 7 that when our Master comes, he is coming with the clouds. And also we're going to look at in a little bit later in this presentation how all the tribes of the earth mourning because of him, the response of the people when they see him, because it says here every eye shall see him, they're responding with mourning. We're going to actually read how people are going to be hiding. Let's look at Matthew chapter 24 verses 29 through 31. Starting from verse 29. And immediately after the distress of those days, the sun shall be darkened, and the moon shall not give its light, and the stars shall fall from the heaven, and the powers of the heavens shall be shaken. Verse 30. And then the sign of the Son of Adam shall appear in the heaven, and then all the tribes of the earth shall mourn. And they shall see the Son of Adam coming on the clouds of the heaven with power and much esteem. Verse 31. And he shall send his messengers or angels with the great sound of a trumpet, and they shall gather together his chosen ones from the four winds, from one end of the heavens to the other. Praise Yah for the truth of his word. It's so plain for us to see. So we have the alignment with Acts chapter 1 of our Master returning the same way he left with the clouds. Here we see a confirmation again in Revelation chapter 1 verse 7 that Messiah YHWSHWA is coming with the clouds. Every eye shall see him. And then we have again another confirmation in Matthew chapter 24. The exact same language. Right? Verse 30 saying all the tribes of the earth shall mourn. Right? In response to his coming. And also he's coming with the clouds. Right? Or on the clouds in verse 30 here. Verse 31 is very clear. Why is he coming? To gather his chosen ones. Right? His elect ones. This is the body of Messiah that will be gathered. So we just looked at some scriptural evidence for the gathering being something that is in the scriptures, right? It's not called the rapture, but this is called the gathering. We saw evidence for it in Matthew chapter 24. And now we're going to see how the gathering is actually a fulfillment of a promise and desired prayer. We're going to look at John chapter 14 verses 2 through 3 and also John chapter 17 verse 24. Let's look at John chapter 14 verse 2. In my Father's house are many staying places, and if not, I would have told you. I go to prepare a place for you. John chapter 14 verse 3. And if I go and prepare a place for you, I shall come again and receive you to myself, that where I am you might be too. Now let's look at that scripture carefully. This is Yeshua Messiah promising to his taught ones that he would be leaving to his Father's house, and that when he goes to his Father's house, which we know is in the heavens, that he would prepare a place for them. That in that house in the Shamayim, in the heavens, there are many staying places, right? Places to stay, to live. And he's letting them know, I'm going away, I'm going to prepare a place for you. And then he's saying, he's promising that when he returns, he's going to come again, receive them to himself, so that they could be with him where he is with the Father, right? In his house, in his Father's house. So this is a promise to go away, prepare a place in the Shamayim, not on earth, and to return to the earth to gather them to himself and then return back to the Shamayim with them. That's what this is promising. We know our Master Messiah YHWSHWA is not a liar. So he's fulfilling this promise through the gathering of the elect, right? Of his bride, of the body of Messiah. Let's look at John chapter 17 verse 24. It says this, Father, I desire that those whom you have given me might be with me where I am, so that they see my esteem, which you have given me, because you loved me before the foundation of the world. Thank Yah for this verse here in John chapter 17. Messiah YHWSHWA is praying to the Father. So this is a desire from a prayer of Messiah YHWSHWA. And I know that the answer to this prayer from the Father is yes, right? Whatever the Son asks for, the Father says yes. So the Son said, I desire that those you've given to me might be with me where I am. And that's talking about in the Shamayim, right? That's talking about in his Father's house that we just read about in John chapter 14. Because he wants us who are his to be able to see the great kavod or esteem that the Father has given the Son in the Shamayim, right? They knew him as flesh and blood at the time. They didn't understand. They knew that he was the Son of the Almighty, but the taught ones didn't understand all the kavod of the Son. But to really understand the kavod, the esteem that the Father has given to the Son in the Shamayim, you have to go there, right? So that's the desire, that we would be able to see that esteem of the Son there in the Shamayim. So again, this is the purpose, right? Why? Why the gathering? This is why, to fulfill this promise and this prayer. Here are some more scriptures that show evidence for the gathering. Praise Yah. Let's look at Isaiah chapter 26, verses 19 through 21 first. Starting from verse 19, Isaiah chapter 26, verse 19. Let your dead live, together with my dead body. Let them arise. Awake and sing, you who dwell in dust, for your dew is a dew of light. And let the earth give birth to the departed spirits. Verse 20 of Isaiah chapter 26. Go, my people, enter your rooms and shut your doors behind you. Hide yourself, as it were, for a little while, until the displeasure is past. Verse 21 of Isaiah chapter 26. For look, Yah is coming out of his place to punish the inhabitants of the earth for their crookedness, and the earth shall disclose her blood, and no longer cover her killed ones. So we'll pause right there before we move on to our next scripture in Luke chapter 21. Let's look at Isaiah chapter 26 here, these verses again. It's showing evidence for people who are dead coming to life, right? And the earth giving birth to departed spirits. But also, not only that, they're being taken, right? They're arising, they're awaking, they're coming to life, right? Resurrection. And what happens after that? In verse 20, they're being told to enter your rooms. Remember when Messiah YHWSHWA said that there were many staying places in his Father's house, and that he was preparing a place for them? Here it says, enter your rooms, hide yourself for a little while. Now, as we continue to read the scriptural evidence for this gathering and what's really taking place, we're going to see that the body of Messiah, who's also the bride of Messiah at the time, that's going to be ready, they're going to be gathered at the sixth seal. And in Revelation chapter 7, they appear in the Shamayim before the throne in the heavens. And this is when that hiding for a little while takes place. From that point, from that sixth seal, all the way until the seventh bowl of wrath has been poured out. Because after that seventh bowl of wrath is poured out, that's when, again, Messiah returns on the white horse with his army, which is going to be his bride on white horses also. We'll see all that as we continue to study. But that's why I say that, yes, this Isaiah chapter 26, these verses can be fulfilled by the bride of Messiah coming to life, those who are dead. And we're going to see evidence of that. Again, more scriptural evidence from Shaul, also known as Paul. How the dead in Messiah are to rise first. How the body of Messiah is going to be changed before being taken. Praise Yah, before the gathering. So let's look at our scripture here in Luke chapter 21, verse 36. Watch then at all times, and pray that you be counted worthy to escape all that is about to take place, and to stand before the Son of Adam. Now, this is a fulfillment of being gathered as one of the elect ones. Here in Luke chapter 21, verse 36. That's why Messiah said, right, stay alert, to watch, to pray, stay alert, stay awake, to be counted worthy, right, to escape. And all that's about to take place is referring to on the earth. The 144,000 are going to be sealed. When the sixth seal is open, that's when the 144,000 will be sealed also. But that is not the gathering of the elect. The gathering of the elect is from all the nations on the earth who are believers in Messiah YHWSHWA, and also all the dead in Messiah from generation to generation, right? From the 1st century Common Era to the present time, the 21st century Common Era. All the set apart ones, all those who have received Messiah YHWSHWA and become part of the bride and the body of Messiah YHWSHWA. So there's a difference between them, that innumerable multitude that comes from out of all the nations, out of all the tongues, and then also the 144,000, which are only from the 12 tribes of Israel. And there's a set limit to them, right? Only 144,000. So we're going to look at the differences. You're going to have to be able to understand the different groups that are mentioned in the book of Revelation to really understand what's going on. But Luke chapter 20 verse 36 here, it really does show that it is possible. It wouldn't make sense for Messiah to mention this, that there will be some who are counted worthy to escape, right? And not only that, to stand before the Son of Adam, because when we get to Revelation chapter 7, we're going to see that that's what this bride body of Messiah, these elect ones that are gathered, they will be before the Son of Adam in the Shamayim, before the throne. Let's also look at Revelation chapter 3 verse 10 here, because Yah made this promise again through his Son to the assemblies, right? And the assemblies are believers in Messiah YHWSHWA. Chapter 3 verse 10 of Revelation. Because you have guarded my word of endurance, I also shall guard you from the hour of trial, which shall come upon all the world, to try those who dwell on the earth. So this is talking about the trumpets, right? The 7 trumpets. Because after the 6th seal, that's when the body of Messiah is going to be gathered. And we're going to see the evidence for the signs of that. Perfect alignment between Revelation chapter 6 and the other scriptures that show us the signs of his coming and the gathering of the elect ones. But here it's letting you know in Revelation chapter 3 verse 10 that for the assemblies there is a way, right, for them to be guarded or kept from the hour of trial, which is really for those in the world, right? Those dwelling on the earth. Let us look at some deeper descriptions of the gathering. Here in 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, we're going to read verses 15 through 17. These are from Shaul. Starting from verse 15. For this we say to you by the word of the Master, that we, the living who are left over at the coming of the Master, shall in no way go before those who are asleep. Verse 16. Because the Master himself shall come down from heaven with a shout, with the voice of a chief messenger, and with the trumpet of Elohim, and the dead in Messiah shall rise first. Verse 17. Then we, the living who are left over, shall be caught away together with them in the clouds to meet the Master in the air, and so we shall always be with the Master. So let us consider these verses. It's talking about, look at verse 15, a coming of the Master, right? Verse 16 says he's coming down. But if you really pay attention, he's in the clouds, right? He's not actually on the earth ruling for 1,000 years or on the earth for battle. No, this is actually just for the gathering, right? It's telling us in verse 15 that this has to do with those who have fallen asleep in the Master, right? Those are those who have died in the Master in belief in Messiah YHWSHWA. Verse 16 says that the dead in Messiah will rise first, right? These are people who died in their natural bodies. They're going to be resurrected. But everyone's going to be changed, right? Verse 14 says everyone's going to be caught away together in the clouds, right? To meet the Master in the air. That means he's in the air. He's in the clouds, just like what we read, right? In Matthew 24, in also Acts chapter 1, what the evidence that we have for our Master returning in the air. Here we see it, perfect alignment, 1 Thessalonians chapter 4 here in these verses. We're caught away together. Again, I don't like that word rapture. I like it has to do with being gathered, because that's what the scripture calls it. But here it says caught away together, right? With them in the clouds to meet the master in the air. And then it says that from that point on, we'll always be with him. And that aligns perfectly with what I'm saying, that when we get to Revelation chapter 6, the sixth seal is going to open. The Lamb of Yah will open the sixth seal, and the gathering will take place of his elect, of his chosen ones, which are the body of Messiah, right? Which is his bride. And they will be taken, and they will always be with the master from that point on. Praise Yah. And this also aligns with what we read in John chapter 14, that Messiah YHWSHWA promised his taught ones, again, believers, that he would come back for them, and that they would be with him where he is then. So that aligns well with this 1 Thessalonians chapter 4 verse 17, that we will always be with the master from that point onward. Here are some more deeper descriptions of the gathering, again from Shaul. Here's another witness in 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verses 51 through 52. It's talking about the same exact event, the gathering. It says, "See, I speak a secret to you. We shall not all sleep, but we shall all be changed." Verse 52, "In a moment, in the twinkling of an eye, at the last trumpet. For the trumpet shall sound, and the dead shall be raised incorruptible, and we shall be changed." So in these scriptures we see, we have to align them with everything else we've read, that the dead in Messiah will rise first, right? And not all shall be dead, right? In other words, at this coming, there will be some that are alive, but all shall be changed, right? All shall be changed from their natural body to a spiritual body. And we see here that a trumpet will sound, the dead shall be raised incorruptible, we shall all be changed. So that all aligns well with what we've been reading so far in the other scriptures. And we're going to see how it aligns further. The signs of the gathering reveal its timing. So these are the signs that I referred to in Revelation chapter 6, when the sixth seal is open. We're going to see how these signs that are to take place exactly at this time fit perfectly with what our Master Messiah YHWSHWA said would happen when he comes to gather his chosen ones. Revelation chapters 6, verses 12 through 17, starting from verse 12. "And I looked when he opened the sixth seal, and saw a great earthquake came to be, and the sun became black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became as blood." Verse 13, "And the stars of the heaven fell to the earth, as a fig tree drops its unripe figs, being shaken by a strong wind." Verse 14, "And heaven departed like a scroll being rolled up, and every mountain and island was moved out of its place." Verse 15, "And the sovereigns of the earth, and the great ones, and the rich ones, and the commanders, and the mighty, and every slave, and every free one, hid themselves in the caves and in the rocks of the mountains." Verse 16, "And said to the mountains and rocks, Fall on us, and hide us from the face of him sitting on the throne, and from the wrath of the Lamb." Verse 17, "Because the great day of his wrath has come, and who is able to stand?" So here, in these verses, we see exactly what's happening when the sixth seal is open. We see a great earthquake. Let's remember that sign. We see the sun becoming black. We see the moon becoming as blood, right? We see the stars of the heaven falling to the earth, right? The mountains and islands be moved out of their place. In other words, this is something that's going to capture the attention of everyone on earth. This isn't something that's going to be done in the dark, quietly, secret. Nobody knows what's going on or what happened. That's why it says the truth about this gathering is that when Messiah YHWSHWA comes, everyone's going to mourn, right? They're going to be in sorrow. They're going to know that these signs and what's happening is from the Almighty, right? That's what verse 16 says. "Hide us from him sitting on the throne, which is the Almighty, and the wrath of the Lamb." because they're going to see him, right? All the tribes will see him. And they know that his wrath is come, verse 17, and who's able to withstand it? And this is just the beginning. These signs in Revelation chapter 6, the sixth seal, is just the beginning of what's known as the great distress. I'm going to explain that in a few more slides further in this presentation. When we understand when is the distress, when is the great distress, right? When is the time of the greater distress that also includes the wrath? You got to be able to understand those moments also when you read the book of Revelation. But this is at the very beginning of the great distress, and they're like, who can bear this? Praise Yah. So we know now from the previous slide that the timing of the gathering is the sixth seal from the book of Revelation. Now we're going to look at how we align all the scriptural signs of the gathering in the different scriptures that we've already looked at. So we have Matthew chapter 24 verse 29. We have Matthew chapter 24 verse 30, Matthew chapter 24 verse 31, Revelation chapter 6 from verses 12 through 14. Also 1 Thessalonians chapter 4 verses 15 through 17, 1 Corinthians chapter 15 verse 51 and 52, and then John chapter 14 verses 2 and 3. And we're going to just align these scriptures and see how they connect together. They were meant to be, right? We're supposed to be able to see this greater understanding of how this is all coming together. So Messiah YHWSHWA is saying here in Matthew chapter 24 verse 29, immediately after the distress of those days. So that has to do with the timing also for those who can receive it. After the distress comes the great distress. So when Messiah YHWSHWA says immediately after the distress of those days, that's telling us that the distress was seals 1 through 5. The things that happen with seals 1 through 5. Immediately after the distress, after seal 5, well, that's seal 6. And this is exactly what happens. The sun is darkened. We saw that, right? Let's look at here in Revelation chapter 6 verse 12. It says the sun became black as sackcloth. So that's fulfilled. What we see in Matthew chapter 24 verse 29 is fulfilled with the sixth seal in Revelation chapter 6 verse 12. It also says in Matthew chapter 24 verse 29 that the moon is not giving its light. Well, let's look at Revelation chapter 6 verse 12. It says the moon became as blood, right? Let's also look at in Matthew chapter 24 verse 29. It says the stars fall from the heaven and the powers of the heaven shall be shaken, right? So let's see if we have that in Revelation chapter 6. We see in verse 13 that the stars fall from the heaven, fulfilled. We see in verse 12 of Revelation chapter 6 that there's a great earthquake. Again, the powers of the heaven shaken. We see the great earthquake fulfilled. So we see perfect alignment here between Matthew 24 and Revelation chapter 6. Let's look at 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, right? Because in Matthew, it says that the Son of the Almighty, the Son of Adam, which is Messiah YHWSHWA, that he's coming on the clouds to gather his chosen ones, right? So here we see in 1 Thessalonians chapter 4 verse 15 that Messiah is coming, right? In verse 16 of 1 Thessalonians chapter 4 it says he's coming with a shout of a chief messenger or chief angel, right? Well, that's what it says in Matthew chapter 24 verse 31 here. It mentions his messengers or his angels, right? And the sound of a trumpet. In 1 Thessalonians chapter 4 verse 16, it also mentions the trumpet of Elohim and the dead of Messiah rising, right? And verse 31 of Matthew chapter 24, it says that his chosen ones are being gathered, right? In 1 Corinthians chapter 15, it mentions in verse 52 that the last trumpet sounds and the dead in Messiah are raised incorruptible. Praise Yah. So there again, the connection to the trumpet that we read about in Matthew chapter 24 verse 31 and 1 Thessalonians chapter 4. So there we see alignment between those several scriptures. And the fact that has to do with resurrection and being gathered, right? Being taken. And again in John chapter 14, verses 2 and 3, Messiah leaving, promising to prepare a place for his taught ones, which are his bride, the body of Messiah, and promising to return to receive them to himself so that they can be where he is, right? In the Shamayim. So again, fulfilled. Matthew chapter 24, verse 31, the chosen ones are being gathered. And in the other verses of scripture here, in 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, verse 17, they're meeting the master in the air so that they can always be with the master. Again, they're going back to the Shamayim, right? That's where the master came from the Shamayim, from the heavens, going back. Praise Yah. The bride of Messiah YHWSHWA appeared before the throne in the Shamayim before the seventh seal. First, let's remember what it says here in Luke chapter 21, verse 36, that those that are worthy to escape all that's about to take place, we know on the earth, and to stand before the Son of Adam. And I mentioned that that's a connection to what happens in Revelation chapter 7, where the body of Messiah, the bride of Messiah, is gathered, just like we read about in Matthew chapter 24. And then they appear before the throne in the Shamayim, in the heavens, right? So the great distress, this lasts from seals number 6 and 7, and then trumpets 1 through 7. And you can find evidence for those in Revelation chapter 6, verse 12, through Revelation chapter 11, verse 15. So that's where you would find that. So that's where the period of the great distress is. It lasts throughout that time. And that's why Messiah YHWSHWA said, after the distress of those days, because this is the beginning of the great distress. And we're going to read, as we read these verses in Revelation chapter 7, that this innumerable multitude out of all the nations who are the body of Messiah, it's said of them, they've come out of the great distress. Praise Yah. Let's read verses 9 through 15 here of Revelation chapter 7. Verse 9. After this, meaning after the sixth seal, because the sixth seal has just had just taken place in Revelation chapter 6. After this I looked and saw a great crowd, which no one was able to count, out of all nations and tribes and peoples and tongues, standing before the throne and before the Lamb, dressed in white robes and palm branches in their hands. Verse 10, and crying out with a loud voice, saying, deliverance belongs to our Elohim, who sits on the throne, and to the Lamb. Verse 11, and all the messengers or angels stood around the throne and the elders and the 4 living creatures, and fell on their faces before the throne and worshipped Elohim. Verse 12, saying, Amen. The blessing and the esteem and the wisdom and the thanksgiving and the respect and the power and the might to our Elohim forever and ever. Amen. Verse 13, and one of the elders responded, saying to me, who are these dressed in white robes, and where did they come from? Verse 14, and I said to him, Master, you know. And he said to me, these are those coming out of the great distress, having washed their robes and made them white in the blood of the Lamb. Verse 15, because of this they are before the throne of Elohim, and serve him day and night in his dwelling place. And he who sits on the throne shall spread his tent over them. Praise Yah for these scriptures and all of his truth coming forth. This group, right, who's described in verse 9 here, chapter 7 of Revelation, verse 9, that they're made up of, they're coming out of all nations, tribes, peoples, and tongues. Again, this is the body of Messiah. It says they're without number, right? No one could count this great crowd. Like I said, from the 1st century Common Era when Messiah YHWSHWA came, when the Word was made flesh, and the good news was shared with man, right? The deliverance came and people believed. From that time all the way, we can say up to the 21st century, right, in our common time, common era, that's 2,000 years at least of believers throughout the generations coming together as a body of Messiah. Now, they're dressed in white robes, they're celebrating, they've just been gathered. And that's why they're crying out in verse 10, deliverance, right? They're crying out. Their song is a song of deliverance. We're going to see different groups in the book of Revelation at different times throughout, what's happening in the book of Revelation, and they're going to have their own songs. The 144,000 have their own song. There's also going to be a group of Israelite martyrs who will have their own special song. But this group here, they have their own song, and their song is deliverance, because they've been delivered. According to verse 14 of Revelation chapter 7, it says they've come out of the great distress. They've come out of it. Just like it says in Luke chapter 21 verse 36, they've escaped, right, what is about to take place on the earth. And it's because of, right, they were counted worthy because of their belief. Now verse 15 says, what will the body of Messiah or the bride of Messiah be doing from that time? This is just before the seventh seal happens. In other words, after this, then the seventh seal is open. So this is before the seventh seal, and from that time onward up until we get to the seventh bowl of wrath being poured out, the body of Messiah, the bride of Messiah, will be preparing themselves. And as it says here in Revelation chapter 7 verse 15, they're before the throne of Elohim, serving him day and night. That's what the Kohanim, the priests, do, right? They serve. They give offerings twice every day. And this is what the body of Messiah will be doing. The bride of Messiah, serving as priests in the dwelling place of Yah, in the Shamayim, in the heavens, right? The preparation of Yahshua's bride to return with him for battle, to rule, and for the marriage and feast of Yah's, or YHWSHWA, his Lamb. So some people think that the marriage and the marriage supper or feast of the Lamb is going to happen, let's say, after the sixth seal in the heavens. The reality is the bride is preparing herself throughout all that time. And it's not until after the seventh bowl of wrath is poured out that then that it's time for the marriage of the Lamb. Now it's come. And the bride has reached a place of preparation after all those years in the Shamayim. And then they come, right? They return to the earth for battle. In Revelation chapter 19, we read about that already at the beginning of this presentation. How there's going to be a battle between Messiah YHWSHWA on the white horse with his armies also on white horses. And this is who those are. Praise Yah. Let's look at Revelation chapter 19, and we're going to read verses 7 through 9 first. Starting from verse 7. Let us be glad and rejoice, and give him praise, for the marriage of the Lamb has come, and his wife prepared herself. Verse 8. And to her it was given to be dressed in fine linen, clean and bright, for the fine linen is the righteousness of the set-apart ones. Verse 9. And he said to me, write, blessed are those who have been called to the marriage supper of the Lamb. And he said to me, these are the true words of Elohim. Now we'll pause right there before going any further, just to see that the time had come here in Revelation chapter 19 verse 7. Again, this is after the seventh bowl of wrath is poured out. That's when Babel falls, Babylon, on the earth. And that's when Messiah YHWSHWA will leave the Shamayim with his bride to come for battle, right? And then also to rule. So according to verse 7 here in Revelation chapter 19, The marriage of the Lamb has come. It hasn't happened yet. It has just come. And the wife prepared herself. And they're not staying in the Shamayim to have this marriage of the Lamb in the Shamayim, in the heavens, and staying there and then having the marriage supper there. Nope. They're leaving, as we're going to see. They are leaving right away. She's prepared herself. And verse 9 says, blessed are those who are called to the marriage supper of the Lamb. Right? Again, which is about to happen. It's to come. And then let's look at Revelation chapter 19, verse 14. It says, and the armies in the heaven, in the Shamayim, dressed in fine linen, white and clean, followed him on white horses. And that's why I say that his bride, the bride of Messiah, that's them, dressed in fine linen, white and clean. Just like it says in Revelation chapter 19, verse 8, speaking of the bride that prepared herself, is the wife of the Lamb. It says, dressed in fine linen, clean and bright. It's the same ones. Let's also look at Revelation chapter 17, verse 14, because that also speaks of the bride. It says, they shall fight with the Lamb, and the Lamb shall overcome them, for he is master of masters and sovereign of sovereigns, and those with him are called and chosen and trustworthy. And praise Yah, that's his body, that's his bride, who are the called, the chosen. Remember the gathering of the chosen, the elect ones, and trustworthy. The sealing of the 144,000 and the gathering of the chosen ones both happen at the sixth seal. I want to make sure we can understand that both events are happening at the same time. That while Messiah YHWSHWA is gathering his elect, right, his chosen ones, of all those who are part of his body, right, the bride of Messiah YHWSHWA, that he's also going to be sealing 144,000 of the tribes of Israel, right, of the 12 tribes. And we know that Dan is excluded. Ephraim is also excluded, but it mentions the tribe of Yosef. So you could say that Ephraim then is absorbed into there. But Dan is definitely excluded. But of those tribes of Israel, the 144,000, this will happen. They'll be sealed on their forehead with the name of Almighty Yah, and they will be protected. So Revelation chapter 6, verses 12 through 17, we already looked at those verses. That's the opening of the sixth seal and the signs that accompany. Revelation chapter 7, verses 1 through 8, if we were to look at it, that's the sealing of the 144,000 of the tribes of Israel, and it happens after the sixth seal is open. So that's why I say it's at the same time. Revelation chapter 7, verses 9 through 15, we just looked at those verses. The body and bride of Messiah appear in the Shamayim, in the heavens, before the throne after the gathering. The 144,000 remain on earth until the seventh trumpet or shofar. Sometimes people think that the 144,000 of the tribes of Israel are just believers in Messiah, but I disagree with that. The bride of Messiah in Revelation chapter 7, it says there's no number for them, and they're coming out of all the nations, different tongues, different tribes of people. But here, the 144,000, it's a very specific number. It is numbered, and it is only from the tribes of Israel, right? So there's a difference between these two groups. Revelation chapter 7, verses 1 through 3. There we would find the sealing of the 144,000 of the tribes of Israel after the sixth seal is open. In Revelation chapter 9, verses 1 through 4, if you were to read that, you would see that the 144,000 of the tribes of Israel, they're still enduring on the earth at the time of the fifth trumpet. Remember, they were sealed to be protected from harm. So they're staying on the earth. The bride and body of Messiah, they appear in the Shamayim, and they've escaped what is happening on the earth, right? They've come out of the great distress, which is the beginning of these things I mentioned. So again, the 144,000, they're still on the earth. They're sealed at the fifth trumpet. They're still there in that verse, or those verses in chapter 9 of Revelation. In Revelation chapter 10 verse 7, it says this: "But in the days of the sounding of the seventh messenger," or seventh angel, "when he is about to sound, the secret of Elohim shall also be ended, as he declared to his servants the prophets." Praise Yah. And this secret has everything to do with Messiah YHWSHWA reigning, right? Taking authority and reigning over all the earth. That's what's to come. So when that seventh messenger sounds, it's actually the third woe. If anyone is a student of the book of Revelation, you would know that there are three woes. And the messenger, or angel number 4, he mentions the three woes to come, which would be messenger or angel number 5, angel number 6, angel number 7. Those are the three woes. And the first two woes are described for exactly what they are, but the seventh woe, it's a mystery. And you have to put the pieces together and understand what the seventh woe is. The seventh woe is actually the beast beginning that 42 months. So that's that the seventh woe. I apologize, the third woe, when the seventh trumpet sounds. Praise Yah. But also, it's a good thing when the seventh trumpet sounds, because a proclamation is made, and we're going to look at that right now here in Revelation chapter 11 verse 15. A proclamation is made that Messiah YHWSHWA has taken the authority to reign from that time onward. Before that, the adversary was allowed to reign over the earth. He's known as the God of this world. But Messiah YHWSHWA, from the seventh trumpet onward, he takes his authority. And even though the beasts will have 42 months to do things to overcome the set apart ones, and we'll look at that when it comes to the Israelite martyrs, but still it's limited what's going to be permitted. And during that same time, there's going to be wrath poured out, 7 bowls of wrath. So let's look at Revelation chapter 11 verse 15 here. "And the seventh messenger sounded, and there came to be loud voices in the heaven, saying, the reign of this world," see, this is a proclamation, "the reign of this world has become the reign of our master and of his Messiah, and he shall reign forever and ever." Right? It has to do with rulership. It's a proclamation of rulership and authority. And if we were to read Revelation chapter 12, we would see exactly what happens if there's going to be a war in the Shamayim, or battle, that the adversary is going to be thrown out, him and his fallen messengers, after they lose this battle, and that when they come to the earth, they know they have a short time. That's the 42 months, the beginning of that 42 months. Praise Yah. But let's look at let's talk about Revelation chapter 14, and we're going to read verses 1 through 5. Verses 1 through 5. This is all about the 144,000, again, from the tribes of Israel. And they've been restored, because up until this time, the 12 tribes of Israel are scattered among the nations. This is the word of Yah says, that they're dispersed, scattered throughout the nations. But here we see that the 144,000, they serve as first fruits of Israel restored as one people, right? So let's read verses 1 through 5 here in Revelation chapter 14, verse 1. "And I looked and saw a lamb standing on Mount Sion, and with him 144,000, having his father's name written upon their foreheads." Now in Revelation chapter 7, it mentions that the 144,000 are sealed in their forehead. It doesn't say that they were sealed with the Father's name, but here we see that that's the seal that they received, the Father's name. "Now they appear in the Shamayim." Verse 2, "And I heard a voice out of the heaven, like the voice of many waters, and like the voice of loud thunder. And I heard the sound of harpists playing their harps." So this is a celebration, just like in Revelation chapter 7, the bride of Messiah appears before the throne, and they had their own song. They were singing a song of deliverance for having come out of the great distress. Here we have the 144,000. Again, the timing of these scriptures is after the seventh trumpet. So they were up on the earth up to the seventh trumpet. Now, let's look at, we already looked at verse 2, the harp is sounding their harps, they're celebrating. And verse 3 says, because this is 144,000, they sang a new song before the throne. So they also appear before the throne and before the four living creatures and the elders. And no one was able to learn that song except the 144,000 who were redeemed from the earth. So it's a special song that's just for them, praise Yah, and they've just been redeemed from the earth. Verse 4, they are those who are not defiled with women, for they are maidens, and they are those following the Lamb wherever he leads them on. They were redeemed from among men, being first fruits to Elohim and to the Lamb. Verse 5, and in their mouth was found no falsehood, for they are blameless before the throne of Elohim. Distinguishing between diverse groups mentioned in Revelation. To correctly interpret Revelation, one must understand who the bride of Messiah is as a group that is different from these other groups. So these are the other groups other than the body of Messiah, the bride of Messiah. The 144,000 of the tribes of Israel, we just read about them. The Israelite martyrs who keep Torah and will accept YHWSHWA. And so that was another group, those martyrs. And scattered Israel, which is the woman who's kept from the presence of the serpent for 1,260 days, which is the equivalent of 3.5 years, or time times and half a time, and will enter into the new covenant and return to their promised land in the 1,000-year reign of Messiah YHWSHWA. From what we read in Ezekiel chapter 37, the Israel will be restored. So they're going to enter into the new covenant and they're going to enter into the promised land. Praise Yah, and they're going to be there during the 1,000-year reign of Messiah YHWSHWA. So we have to know the difference between these groups again. Now, interestingly, again, scattered Israel, or the woman, they're kept from the presence of the serpent during that 42-month period, 3.5 years. So they're protected. We're going to remember what we read in Revelation chapter 7, verses 9 through 15. That's where the bride and chosen of Messiah YHWSHWA appear before the Shamayim, before the throne in the heavens. They're first. Then we're going to remember in Revelation chapter 14, verses 1 through 5, we just read that. The 144,000 of the tribes of Israel, they will appear before the throne in the Shamayim, in the heavens, right? Then we'll remember, or we'll read about now, Revelation chapter 12, verse 6, and Revelation chapter 12, verses 12 through 17. The woman symbolizes scattered Israel who will be gathered at the beginning of the 1,000-year reign. And let's look at that really quick. In Revelation chapter 12, verse 6, Revelation chapter 12, verse 6 says this, and the woman fled into the wilderness, where she has a place prepared by Elohim to be nourished there 1,260 days. Let's also look at Revelation chapter 12, verses 12 through 17, starting from verse 12. Because of this rejoice, O heavens, and you who dwell in them. Woe to the earth and the sea, because the devil has come down to you, having great wrath, knowing that he has little time. That's verse 12 of Revelation chapter 12. And you notice there it mentions the word woe. That is the third woe. It doesn't say it's the third woe, but it is. the third woe, and this is after the seventh trumpet sounds, right? It says the devil is cast down to the earth, and he has great wrath, knowing he has a little time, and that little time is 42 months. Verse 13 says, and when the dragon saw that he had been thrown down to the earth, he persecuted the woman who gave birth to the male child. Verse 14, and the woman was given 2 wings of a great eagle to fly into the wilderness to her place where she is nourished for a time and times and half a time from the presence of the serpent. So this woman, which is scattered Israel, will be protected and nourished for that 1,260 days, which is also time, times, and half a time, and that's from the book of Daniel, and we'll look at that scripture soon. But notice, she's protected from the presence of the serpent. In other words, she can't be touched. But we're going to read about some Israelite martyrs that can be touched and will be beheaded. Verse 15 here says, and out of his mouth the serpent spewed water like a river after the woman, to cause her to be swept away by the river. Verse 16, and the earth helped the woman, and the earth opened its mouth and swallowed up the river which the dragon had spewed out of his mouth. Last verse, verse 17. And the dragon was enraged with the woman, and he went to fight with the remnant of her seed. So he couldn't touch her, but he's permitted to touch the remnant of her seed. He's allowed to fight against them. And it says that this is who they are. Those guarding the commands of Elohim, right, keeping Torah, and possessing the witness of Yeshua Messiah. So they're believers in Messiah Yeshua. They come to believe in Messiah Yeshua during this time, right? During these days, things that they're going to be happening on the earth. So they are Israelites, right? If the woman is scattered Israel and the woman represents Israel, then the remnant of the seed of the woman are also Israel. That's why I say they're Israelite martyrs. Praise Yah. And here in Revelation chapter 15, verses 1 through 4, that's where we find these Israelite martyrs, and I will read it, who accept Messiah Yeshua. They appear before the throne. Because they're actually going to be reaped from the earth. Praise Yah. After they're beheaded, they're going to be reaped from the earth, and then they appear before the throne. So again, this is a different group, right? And they'll have their own song. So let's read in Revelation chapter 15, verses 1 through 4. And I saw another sign in the heaven, great and marvelous, 7 messengers or angels having the 7 last plagues, for the wrath of Elohim was ended in them. And I saw like a sea of glass mixed with fire, and those overcoming the beast. This is who he's seeing, right? Those overcoming the beast and his image and his mark and the number of his name, standing on the sea of glass, holding harps of Elohim. They're celebrating also. They're giving thanks and praise before the throne. Verse 3, and they sing the song of Moshe, the servant of Elohim. Remember, the children of Israel sang that song when Yah delivered them out of Mizraim. So that's why I say again, these are Israelites. They sing the song of Moshe and the song of the Lamb, saying, great and marvelous are your works, Yah El Shaddai. Righteous and true are your ways, O sovereign of the set apart ones. Verse 4, who shall not fear you, O Yah, and esteem your name? Because you alone are kind. Because all nations shall come and worship before you. For your righteousnesses have been made manifest. Praise Yah. Understanding the timing of the distress, great distress, and worsening great distress and wrath. So we discussed this a little bit in this presentation already, but here we're going to have a visual so we can really understand it better. So the time of distress is seals 1 through 5. Seal 1, Seal 2, Seal 3, Seal 4, Seal 5. You can find those in Revelation chapter 6, verses 1 through 11. The time of the great distress Remember, Messiah Yeshua said after the distress of those days, and then he said this is what's going to happen. The gathering is going to happen of the chosen ones. So the time of the great distress is from the sixth seal all the way, I apologize, seal 6, seal 7, and then also trumpets 1 through 7. Trumpet 1, trumpet 2, trumpet 3, trumpet 4, trumpet 5, trumpet 6, trumpet 7, all 7 of them. You can find that in Revelation chapter 6 verses 12 going forward all the way to Revelation chapter 11 verse 15. Now after those 7 trumpets, you have what's known as the bowls of wrath, but it's still technically a time of great distress. It's still continued great, it's still called great distress, but I call it worsening great distress, because from the 7 trumpets to the 7 bowls of wrath, things just progress worse and worse and worse. So that's why I see that as a type of division, and that it's worsening, right? And there you'll find that bowls number 1 through bowls number 7 of the bowls of wrath. You can find that in Revelation chapter 15 verse 5 and go all the way through Revelation chapter 16 verse 21. Now in Matthew chapter 24 verse 15, we're going to read verses 15 through 22. Messiah Yeshua mentions that an abomination that lays waste is set up in the set apart place. Now this is actually going to happen right after the 7th trumpet sound, because remember, the 7th trumpet, that's that 3rd woe. That's when the beast begins those 42 months of his reign. And Messiah Yeshua was letting the people know in Matthew 24 here the timing of this, of when those in Yehuda should flee to the mountains, right, to escape these times that are going to be like none other than, and that's why sometimes people try to say, well, can't we say that this was already fulfilled by someone else another time in the history of the children of Israel, or the children, specifically of the tribe of Yehuda? We can say yes, certain things we could say are partially fulfilled. However, Messiah Yeshua is very clear, and we're going to read it here. He mentions the abomination that lays waste is set up in the set apart place. Set apart place is talking about the house of Yah on earth. People call it a temple, right? And we're going to see that in the book of Daniel. I know it's not popular. Many people don't want to believe it, that there's scriptural evidence that there's going to be a house of Yah on the earth, or a temple on the earth during the time of what we would call the great distress. That's what the scriptures show us. And the scriptures also show us in Ezekiel that there's going to be a greater house of Yah that's going to be built during the time of the 1,000-year reign of Messiah. But let's look at this one first. Let's look at Matthew chapter 24, verses 15 through 22, starting from verse 15. And again, this is Messiah Yeshua speaking to his taught ones. So when you see the abomination that lays waste, spoken of by Daniel the prophet, set up in the set apart place, he who reads, let him understand. That's verse 15. So we're going to go back to Daniel to understand what is going on. What is this abomination that's going to be set up in the set apart place, right? In the house of Yah. Verse 16 here in Matthew 24. Then let those who are in Yehuda flee to the mountains. Verse 17. Let him who is on the housetop not come down to take whatever out of his house. Verse 18. And let him who is in the field not turn back to get his garments. Verse 19, and woe to those who are pregnant and to those who are nursing children in those days. Verse 20, and pray that your flight does not take place in winter or on Sabbath. Verse 21, for then there shall be great distress, such as has not been since the beginning of the world, until this time, no, nor ever shall be. So this is a great distress that has never happened to this extent, in this bad of a way. And again, the trigger to understanding of when this is, when this abomination that lays waste is set up in the set apart place. Our last verse, verse 22, and if those days were not shortened, no flesh would be saved, but for the sake of the chosen ones those days shall be shortened. We know that the beast is only given 42 months to do what he's going to do, and that's how those days are shortened. Let's go to Daniel chapter 8. Let's see what our master was talking about. He told us to go to the book of Daniel and read with understanding. Daniel chapter 8 verse 11. It says this, "It even exalted itself as high as the prince of the host, and it took that which is continual away from him." That which is continual is talking about the daily offerings, the two offerings that happen every day, twice in the day. So again, let's read it again. "It even exalted itself as high as the prince of the host, and it took that which is continual away from him, and threw down the foundation of his set apart place." So there has to be a house of Yah for there to be a foundation of a set apart place that's being thrown down. And that's why it says that this abomination lays waste. He's laying waste the house of Yah, right? The order of the house of Yah, and he's setting himself up. We're going to see evidence of that. Here we just see that he's taking away that which is continual. But as we continue to make connections in Daniel and other places, we're going to see that yes, this beast that's mentioned in Revelation chapter 13 is going to be set up in the set apart place. Let's look at Daniel chapter 9 verse 27. And that reads, "And he shall confirm a covenant with many for 1 week. And in the middle of the week he shall put an end to slaughtering and meal offering." That's why I said that that which is continual are those offerings. And here we see evidence of it, right? He's putting an end to slaughtering and meal offering. "And on the wing of abominations," there we see that word. Remember from Matthew 24, our master mentioned abomination. "He shall lay waste, even until the complete end, and that which is decreed is poured out on the one who lays waste." And that's talking about the house of Yah. That's what he's laying waste. Let's look at verse 27 again, the beginning. It says he's confirming a covenant with many for a week. That's a 7-year period. And in the middle of the week, that's when he begins doing all these things. When you get to that middle of the week, you'd have to go to Revelation chapter 11 and read about those 2 witnesses, because they're given exactly 3.5 years to do what, you know, they're prophesying, their testimony, all the things that they're going to be doing during that 1,260 days. And right after they finish their testimony, the beast kills them. And then eventually he starts his 42 months. So at that midpoint period, the middle of the week, that's when these things start. Here in Daniel chapter 9 verse 27. Let's also look at Daniel chapter 11 verse 31. Daniel chapter 11 verse 31. "And strong ones shall arise from him and profane the set apart place." Again, this is talking about the house of Yah. You have to accept that this is a house that will be built during these times, during the times of the great distress on the earth. "The stronghold, and shall take away that which is continual." Exactly what we've been reading in the other 2 verses in Daniel that we just looked at. Taking away that which is continuous, talking about offerings. "And set up the abomination that lays waste." There it is. That's what our Master Messiah Yeshua was talking about in Matthew chapter 24. For us to pay attention and understand. He's setting up the abomination that lays waste. Let's look at Daniel chapter 12 verse 11. Daniel chapter 12 verse 11. And that says, "And from the time that which is continual is taken away, and the abomination that lays waste is set up, is 1,290 days." Praise Yah. So there we see it. Again, more evidence that that which is continued, the offerings are going to be stopped, and you know, the abomination that lays waste, that lays the house of Yah waste, is setting itself up in there. Let's look at 2 Thessalonians chapter 2. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 verses 3 and 4, because they talk about this exact time. And then again, this is another confirmation. Starting from verse 3, let no one deceive you in any way, because the falling away is to come first, and the man of lawlessness is to be revealed, the son of destruction. This is, I'm pausing for a moment here in verse 3. This is the same one that we're going to read about in Revelation chapter 13, who's known as the beast. He's this man of lawlessness or son of destruction. Talked about here in verse 2. I apologize, in verse 3 of chapter 2 here in 2 Thessalonians. Verse 4, 2 Thessalonians chapter 2. Who opposes and exalts himself above all that is called Elohim, or that is worship, so that he sits as Elohim in the dwelling place of Elohim, showing himself that he is Elohim. So we see again the laying waste, right? Being set up. He's going to sit in the dwelling place of the Almighty in his own house, right? In the set apart place, as if he is the Almighty. That's what this is, we're being shown this here. And then in Revelation chapter 13, we're going to read about an image that is going to be set up during the 42 months of this beast. Revelation chapter 13 verses 11 through 15, starting from verse 11. And I saw another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had 2 horns like a lamb and spoke like a dragon. Now in Revelation chapter 13, there's a beast described. You'd have to read from the very beginning of the chapter onward. There's a beast that's described, and this is another beast. This one is known as the false prophet in Revelation chapter 19. But here he's not called the false prophet, but he is. Verse 12, and he exercises all the authority of the first beast in his presence, and causes the earth and those who dwell in it to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed. Verse 13, and he goes and he does great signs, so that he even makes fire come down from the heaven on the earth before men. Verse 14, and he leads astray those dwelling on the earth because of those signs which he was given to do before the beast, saying to those dwelling on the earth to make an image of the beast who was wounded by the sword yet lived. Our last verse, verse 15, and there was given to him, to the false prophet, to give spirit or life to the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause to be killed as many as would not worship the image of the beast. So there's going to be an image made also that is going to be worshipped during this time. So now we know exactly what Messiah YHWSHWA was talking about in this time of great distress and how bad it's going to be. And none of these things have happened yet, so yes, they are all to be fulfilled. The pre-tribulation rapture lie. So there are believers in Messiah YHWSHWA, and some of them may not call him by that name, but they are believers, and many of them believe, especially if they're part of Christianity, that religion. They've been taught about this doctrine called the rapture, and many of them believe it. Many of them believe books that have been written, movies that have been made about this event, and that's what has become doctrine to them, and they've believed those things. But from what I read in the verses that we looked at, we do see evidence for a gathering and a catching away. Those things will happen, being changed. Those things will happen, going from the earth to the Shamayim for a period of time. Those things will happen. However, it's not called the rapture. We have to be very careful. So the pre-tribulation or pre-distress rapture is a man-made doctrine that is contrary to what the Word of Yah shows regarding what the bride of Messiah will endure and the timing of their gathering as, Yahshua's chosen ones. So according to the scriptures, the body of Messiah, the bride of Messiah, will be on earth up until the 6th seal. So they're going to endure the tribulation, right? So there's no such thing as a pre-tribulation rapture. That's not going to happen. They're going to come out of the great distress, right? At the very beginning of the great distress. So they are going to escape things it's not meant for them to be on the earth for. But it's not called a rapture. And it's not pre-tribulation. The gathering after the sixth seal and before the seventh seal of the great tribulation aligns with the YHWH's word, praise Yah. That's the truth about the gathering of the chosen ones. Here are the references that were used in this presentation. I used the Institute for Scriptural Research, ISR, the Scriptures 2009 edition, and I also used eSword, the eSword app from Myers, and that's available online for anyone who would like to avail themselves of it. To Yah be the kabod for all his truth, and may the eyes of those who are meant to have open eyes and open ears and an understanding heart concerning these things, may they receive it. To Yah be all the kabod, in the name of his son, Yahshua Messiah.